Program. This is a reminder that this episode will address various topics related to codependency, amongst other things, and we'll have a reminder about multiple sclerosis. These may be sensitive to some of our viewers. Viewer discretion, as always, is advised. We remind you to consult your doctor, your mental health professional, your outreach group, your sponsor or specialist before adopting any change to your dietary, physical, and or mental health regime. If you're looking for options with respect to mental health, contact SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, at 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. The service is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's a confidential, free information service for individuals and family members facing such stressors. Importantly, if you're feeling suicidal crisis or emotional distress and need to be put in touch with a crisis center, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. It's 1-800-273-8255. Or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. You can also text the word HOME to 741-741. Those resources are also available 24/7, 365. And then something that is near and dear to my heart and has a little bit of updated information in that of my fight with multiple sclerosis. It's been paramount in my mind over the last 16 months and, quite frankly, the last 11 years. The National MS Society is a collective of passionate individuals who want to do something about MS now, to move together towards a world free of multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is comprised of unpredictable and often disabling flare-ups of the central nervous system. Such flare-ups disrupt the flow of information within the brain and between the brain and the body. The National MS Society is the largest private funder of MS researchers in the world, investing more than $1 billion to date. MS stops people from moving, but the National MS Society exists to make sure that MS doesn't. To contact the National MS Society, please call 1-800-344-4867. Once again, 1-800-344-4867. Or go to their website at nationalmssociety.org. Also, as I did last year, I'll be taking part in the Walk MS 2022 at Ridley Creek State Park in Media, Pennsylvania this Saturday, April 23rd at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. The walk site will open at 9 a.m. We are raising money for this in the National MS Society through a Venture to a Cure's fundraising page at rebrand.ly/a venture to a cure. Once again, rebrand.ly/a venture to a cure. Thank you for all of you who have donated money to this amazing organization, or have even gone to the National MS Society to learn more about multiple sclerosis and demyelination. It touches me in so many ways, and I appreciate all of you. And on that, let's begin. It is a very tough question to answer. What do you really want? When you're knee-deep in a mindset of codependency. Codependency has been the bedrock of all the addictions we've talked about on this show. My alcoholism, my overeating, obesity, my compulsive gambling. Codependency was at the bedrock of all of that. But we gravitate to such firefighters and behaviors like that because we don't know what we really want. Or what we want is just a flash in the pan. Doesn't have any sort of foresight past that. So then we go through that question, because it is a very important question, to live the best life we possibly can. This is the Venture Forward. Good evening once again, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome to the Venture Forward. I am John Venturini, a recovering addict of overeating, obesity, alcoholism, and compulsive gambling, and it is an honor and pleasure to see all of you tonight on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, and the Adventure to a Cure's fundraising page for the Walk MS 2022 at rebrand.ly/Adventure to a Cure. You might be asking yourself, JV is really tongue-tied tonight. Why is that? Well, I think in trying to craft together tonight's story and trying to explain what all these things are, it brought back some memories. And then also realizing how much I did push other things, other places, other people in front of me instead of taking care of me. Especially when things were they're most decrepit. You look at the pictures that were in the countdown. There was a picture of a 480-pound version of me, and a picture of someone who ran a half marathon, and a picture of someone who is 300 plus pounds lighter. I know that's a visual representation of what codependency means to me, but the sort of effects of it have been sticking on for a very long time and will always continue to stick on. So that's why I'm a little tongue-tied tonight, and I apologize. But nevertheless, let's see who wins the door prize tonight, and that is going to go to the co-host of VF Talks and a great guest host. That would be Matt Haas on the Awesome Fun Things account over on YouTube. He says, "You're live. I'm here. Woo." Well, woo indeed. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger in all the comments as well, so no one's squinting. Good to see you, my friend. We got Jamie over on YouTube who says, "Hey, I'm at JV Brad." Good to see you, Jamie. Hope you're doing well. Brad asks, "Where can we donate for your walk?" We will talk about that in a minute. I promise. Des over on YouTube and from Australia says, "Long time no see, people. Good morning to you. Hope you're doing well." And then let's see. Brad says, "The change is awesome, JV. I remember that feeling and can't wait to have it again." Well, it requires work. We both know that. We've talked about that before on the show, but also within the groups that we're both in. So it takes work. But when you commit to that work, amazing things happen for sure. Let's talk about something that is happening on Saturday, which I kind of alluded to in the disclaimer. Let me cut over to my graphics. In that today's episode 4.21, talks about what do you really want? And before we do that, let's talk about the Walk MS 2022 over in Media, Pennsylvania on Saturday. As I mentioned before, the site opens at 9. The walk starts at 10 o'clock over in Ridley Creek State Park in Media. If you want to donate money to the National MS Society through Adventure to a Cure's fundraising page, there's a site on the bottom again. It's rebrand.ly/Adventure to a Cure. Once again, rebrand.ly/Adventure to a Cure. I am looking forward to seeing all the other walkers on Saturday. We did it all virtually last year, which granted we did raise a lot of money last year for the National MS Society. Right now, then for this walk, we're at $96,051 for the media walk with a goal of $80,000. So we've beaten that. But there is now a national challenge. If we raise $500,000 for the National MS Society for this walk by the end of April, an anonymous donor is going to also give an additional $100,000 to the National MS Society. We're very close right now, but every donation now is more powerful than ever before. So again, if you get a chance, rebrand.ly/Adventure to a Cure. And go back to Maine for 1 second. We have Sarah, who's joining us on YouTube, who says, "Hi, JV, codependence is very much on my mind right now." Yeah, it's definitely on mine from many different directions. But nevertheless, Sarah, great to see you this evening, and I hope you're doing well. I think the one thing we need to do now, outside of saying hi to Laura Williams on YouTube, who says hello all. Hi, Laura. Hope you're doing well. Is going to a passage from Language of Letting Go from April 17th, which talks to taking care of ourselves. This one is very powerful, and I think the reason why I kind of wanted to use this one tonight, we will do a passage from more Language of Letting Go before the show's over tonight as well. But nevertheless, Language of Letting Go, April 17th, taking care of ourselves. We often refer to recovery from codependency and adult child issues as self-care. Self-care is not, as some may think, a spin-off of the me generation. It isn't self-indulgence. It isn't selfishness. In a negative interpretation of that word, we're learning to take care of ourselves instead of obsessively focusing on another person, another place, another thing. We're learning self-responsibility instead of feeling excessively responsible for others. Self-care also means tending to our true responsibilities to others. We do this better when we're not feeling overly responsible. Self-care sometimes means me first, but usually me too. It means we are responsible for ourselves and can choose to no longer be victims. Self-care means learning to love the person we're responsible for taking care of, ourselves. We do not do this to hibernate in a cocoon of isolation and self-indulgence. We do it so we can better love others and learn to let them love us. Self-care isn't selfish. It's self-esteem. Today, God, help me love myself. Help me let go of feeling excessively responsible for those around me. Show me what I need to do to take care of myself and be appropriately responsible to others. And that is the language of letting go. If you think about it, if you think about the addictions that we've talked about before on the show, and you think about the sort of things that are acting in a firefighter sort of perspective, because I just didn't know how to cope. Well, that's codependence in its rarest form, isn't it? Anyhow, some comments that were popping up. One comment that I'm going to bring this up. Brad said, I'm going to get a Peloton bike and get skinny like JV. Brad, you do the best form of you can. You do the best form of you and you do the best form of you that you can without question. Still tongue-tied tonight. I think one of the reasons why I'm tongue-tied is these three pictures together. They're kind of in the countdown, but I wanted to bring them together on one slide real quick. The picture of the gentleman on the left-hand side from back in January of 2019 was 480 pounds. Was finding every waking moment to go overeat, to drink, and to gamble. And was just absolutely unhappy with life. No matter how good things may have been on the surface, they weren't. They were far from it. That's why a guy like that would be drinking, or overeating, or gambling, and just getting bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where he lost all sense of life, all sense of himself. The guy in the middle, the guy on the right, funny enough, same guy. All three, same guy. Guy in the middle, guy on the right, well, just recently ran a half marathon. Wasn't the fastest time, but he finished it. Something that the guy on the far left would have never been able to do. Because at some point, he started to figure out what he truly wanted. He wanted a life where he wasn't basically doing such dastardly things to jeopardize himself. He was putting himself in a place where he can actually do something. Not only for himself, not only for his state of mind, but for his friends and for his family and for those people that are near and dear to him. For a lot of people. That's who that person is now. But it took him to figure out what he really wanted. So the question you have to ask yourself, and we talked about this before on the show, is answering whether or not we're codependent. The following are 8 characteristics of someone who's codependent, and I thank Terry Cole over at terrycole.com for these questions, or these concepts rather, because she wrote some amazing commentary and amazing sort of advice about this. I've gravitated to her a couple times on this. But am I codependent? Well, is communication a challenge? Let me draw one further off of that. Do you feel communication is a challenge because you feel squelched or shunted by other people, other places, other things, unnecessarily? That is important. Our voice, our opinion is important. We must never lose sight of that. Secondly, are we masking what we need by people-pleasing above and beyond that? Are we looking to someone else's needs before ever thinking about the immediate and acute needs of ourselves? Are we just worried about everybody else and not the person that is actually carrying that stuff out? If so, we're codependent. Are we also talking about someone who's looking to fix everything, no matter what? Things that are out of their control, looking to auto-fix, like automatically, like need to fix it. Instead of just living in the moment and taking everything in for what it is and being okay with anything on whatever side of the coin it flips on. And then certainly, what's a boundary? Have we become to the point where we don't know what a boundary is? Like, do we not even understand the importance of having boundaries and having walls and just letting things fly as they may? Unhealthily so. That's the case. As I say, boundaries, what are they? Well, that's a problem, wouldn't you think? Are problems just minimalized and non-existent? Do we not gravitate to what a problem is? Are we so laissez-faire about everything because we're just living in such a large state of delusion? Because we don't want to deal with what's going on. We don't want to take things, or at least live in the present and observe. That's a problem too. A false narrative, a false sense of reality. If we're overly sacrificing ourselves without taking a look at our critical needs, which is basically a form of what we said before, that's a problem too. If you don't feel well, go to a doctor. No matter what, go to the doctor. If you need to talk to your therapist, put in a message, call your therapist. Do what you have to do to make sure you're living the best life you can. When you're going out and you're finding that you're helping others beyond your love and kindness, then you have to ask yourself, why am I really doing this? So if you think about it from the other side, am I really trying to put on a control play, a power play? Because if that's the case, then you're totally losing all the sort of intent of doing anything kind. Kindness is kindness, unless you just do it to prove a point. And there's some that I know very full well that do that very thing and haven't been open and honest about why they do it. And then last, giving until it hurts, until you conk out without any sense of sustainability. You can go 100 miles per hour as long as you can, but at some point, you're going to conk out. And there's no sustainability, which is incredibly unhealthy if you think about it, because then what do you do is to go forward from that? You're just going to, basically go into solitude. You're going to go into you're going to vanish, so to speak. And that's not good. I mean, there should be a sustained effort. There should be a sustained sort of give or sustained whatever. But don't do that sort of thing and just then disappear. There's something to be said about that. If you think about someone who's codependent, they're always looking for that sort of everything. But there's going to come a point where it's going to peter out and it's going to be nothing. To understand that, to put everything into a normal sort of modulation is very important. The former would be codependence. Some comments. Going back to the pictures real quick, Brad said, I saw those during the content. That was awesome, JV. So proud of you. Thank you, Brad. Appreciate that. Appreciate you. And Jamie said, amazing pictures. Thank you. Jamie also says, Terry Cole's great. Yeah, she's phenomenal. Sarah says, boundaries or more. Yeah. Armor, not amor, armor. Yeah. It's, it could very well be something that can be called either of those things, but I think making sure the walls are tall, especially against people, places, and things that basically are coming out somewhat, what's the word I'm looking for? Not necessarily malevolently, but basically can hurt us, whether they realize it or not. We need to have very tall walls, very tall boundaries. So yeah, that's exactly right. It's a scary sort of prospect, because I didn't really talk much about this on the show in the last 2 years, but I'm going to take a moment out to talk about this. I, being codependent, was very much the sort of person that wasn't doing much for himself, especially at 480 pounds. Where, I told you this, I couldn't walk more than 5 or 10 feet without needing to sit down. So I was just not in a very good, healthy condition. That in itself is codependency. And, getting to a point where we're pushing everything else in front of us and not taking care of ourselves, well, yeah, that's absolutely that. But it caused major derision to my relationships. Major relationships. I'll be honest, my marriage was a casualty of that. No matter how much codependency was from my perspective, or me in the codependent mind from being a receiver, but also codependent from a giver as well. I mean, codependency, when dealing with two parties that are codependent, basically can be seen 50-50, and it certainly was. I have other relationships in this life that were like that too, that were codependent. So to realize that, but then to be honest about that is very important. Now, one can then say, well, is it codependency or is it narcissism? I definitely have empathy, and I definitely care, and I definitely, more times than not, would do anything to make sure everything was all right. So from that perspective, it was far from narcissism. If it was narcissism, I wouldn't be empathetic. I wouldn't care. So there's a major line there, but I think there's a very easy question to answer as far as that. If there's feeling, if there's empathy, then 9 times out of 10, it's not narcissism. It's codependence. So, nevertheless, it's something I've been trying to work through for a very long time, especially in the last 3 years, in this journey of me losing this weight and not drinking and not gambling and trying to figure out the whys and keep on asking the why to the why to the why and realizing why I'm doing these other things that are just harming me. It's not easy, far from it, but we have to do the hard work sometimes to get to a better place. And in a nutshell, that is what we really want. We want to be in a better place. And it's evident from what I'm about to talk to. You see the hierarchy of needs on the right-hand side. There's a reason why that's there. We need to get to know our true needs. But one of the ways we could do that is by talking about ourselves in third-person perspective, if you like, if you want to kind of use the sort of theory of parts theory and understanding that we are the composition of many parts. For example, if I'm going to address my true needs, I could say that John needs kindness and honesty. John needs wisdom, fun, and care. John needs sustainability. John needs whatever the case may be. But I'm talking about myself in third person. And then the question then becomes, what is John going to do to make sure John's needs get met? And it's not a question of what is John or who is John going. It is a question about John looking for John to get his needs met. It's a very tough exercise. It's something that I've been working on and will continue to work on, and it will never end. It's a constantly evolving question, as I'm sure it will be a constantly evolving question for all of you and answering the question for yourself. What do you need? What do you want? The next step would be practicing clear, direct communication and realizing that we don't have to be a diplomat all the time. We don't have to make sure our language is well polished and I dotted and T crossed. We can speak in the most realist language we can. I think when we get rid of that sort of fluff and we could just be ourselves, a lot of that nonsense goes away. Thirdly, we could stay on our side of the fence and realize that people can figure things out on their own, find their own way. They could figure things to whatever sort of situation there is. And if they need help, if and only if they need help, we can't over-assume that. Then when they ask us, we can answer. But we can't overly provide help and just provide help, especially when they don't need our help. That's a tough little compromise as well, or a tough little thing to go across as well, because you think about how we learned about the concept of help growing up. And we were learning to help this person, help that place, whatever, just automatically. Well, if you help someone who doesn't need help, one, you may be more noise than anything else, but secondly, it's also kind of going back to the thing of, why am I actually helping? Am I trying to prove something? So then you have to answer that question too. So at the end of the day, we should stay on our own side of the fence, because otherwise we're muddying the water for sure. Some comments. Matt had a really good question. Why is it called codependency and not just dependency? Codependency assumes that there are multiple parties involved. It's the interaction of one party to the other and that sort of misaligning of that of relationship that makes it codependency. If it was one-sided and there was no sort of thing taken back from, just completely one-sided, it would be dependency. But codependency insinuates that it is two-way. The case that I mentioned before was certainly two-way codependency. I agree, Jamie. That was a very good question. Some more things to think about what we need to do. Perform unconditional self-love, but be very honest to yourself. And it goes back to really figuring out what you want and what you need, but basically rooting yourself on, but in the most honest and transparent way possible. Unconditionally. And keeping that line of communication open to yourself so you can march forward. There's nothing wrong with that. This next one's very hard for someone like me. Letting go of the worst case scenario and live in this moment right now. Don't live for tomorrow and don't live in the past. Learn from the past, but don't dwell upon the past. The reason why you don't think about the worst case scenario all the time is that you are very, very capable of manifesting anything in this life. There have been books out there that say if you think of something as little as 19 seconds, theoretically, And again, it's all metaphysical. There's no way to prove this. But if you're thinking about something over and over and over again, you're definitely promoting energy towards it, whether good or bad. So the best thing you can do is live in this moment and let go of the worst case scenario. Live in the present. You have to do that. Sarah says foreboding joy. Right. The next one would be okay with the unknown. Sometimes there's disappointment, but that is part of the journey. There's going to be good and bad to anything. Well, you can't lose sight of that. Be okay with the unknown. Sometimes the unknown can pleasantly surprise us, but we won't know unless we're okay with it. Not letting that just basically hamper our ways of doing anything. Can't let it paralyze us either. So we got to be okay with the unknown. That is the nature of life. That's the nature of the journey. Lastly, be honest with your behavior that may be potentially codependent. So if we talked about everything that seemed to be a problem area from the preceding slides about am I codependent, be honest about it. Doesn't mean that you're weak or you fail at this. It means you're very much aware. You're observing yourself, and you can course correct yourself. We must observe and not absorb. Someone really wise told me that not too long ago. And it's a really good thing to think about. We must observe and not absorb. More times than not, when we think of ourselves as empathic, we end up absorbing everything. And what does that end up doing to us? It can raise holy heck with us. If we absorb everything without any sort of filter, without any sort of medium, without any sort of modulation towards it. We must observe, not absorb. It's okay to observe. In fact, we should observe. Keeps us aware of what's going on around us. But we must not absorb it. So we talked about those things, but then it goes to the question of what do we really want? And there's some things to think about as far as that. Questions you can ask yourself. What makes you happy? What are your needs, as we discussed before? What are your values? What do you value in this life? What gives you a sense of purpose, right? What do you gravitate to? What activities lead you to basically be yourself? As I say, to stream, in other words. What makes you lose sense of time in that regard? What is the sort of thing that you do that you get great enjoyment out of, but you know is leading to something? There's nothing wrong with that. It's part of the experience, isn't it? Going back to Maine for a second. Jamie says, oh, I get it. Observe, not absorb. Not taking on others' emotions and stuff. That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. Taking care of your own first and foremost, but not by the consumption of others. And there are a lot of people in this life that throw out a lot of stuff, and I could quickly absorb it, and I can quickly be in the world of hurt or not be able to handle it. Or I could do exactly that. I could observe, but not absorb. It's the best thing we can do. Not an easy thing to do, but something we should do and something we must do. And as far as the question of what activities that lead you to stream that and led you to enjoying life, Sarah says, gardening. A very fine gardener, if you ask me. So there you go. It could be something as simple as gardening. It could be anything, right? But these are the things that call you. These are the things you do in this life. So gardening is definitely a good example of that. 4 key questions following that, though, and one very important question at the bottom of this list. What if there were truly no limits? If you think about a world where you weren't hampered by financial sort of limits or what have you, What if there were no limits? If you can think about what the ideal would be, what would that look like? You could at least write it down somewhere. You could at least think about it. What if there were truly no limits? But then from that, you can also ask yourself, who and what do you admire? What do you want to be more like? It's not a question of jealousy. It's a question of admiration. Who in this life do you admire? What in this life do you admire? Where do you admire? Where would you like to be? Start painting a picture of that. Vision board that, if you will. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a manifestation in the best sort of quality. So, who, what, where do you admire? Somewhat along with that then is, well, you know what that admiration looks like. What is the ideal shape of your life? What sort of variant or what sort of isomorphism of that, or what sort of form of that would you like? It's not necessarily what you admire, who you admire, but it's sort of a combination of those things. It takes on a certain shape. So what does that ideal shape look like? Do you look at yourself as a marathon runner that finishes marathons in 2 hours? Then maybe that's it. Or do you look at someone who can bench press 500 pounds? Maybe that's it. Whatever it is. Someone who's really strong, really fast, whatever. Someone that is, doing a lot for the community, or doing a lot for science, or doing a lot for whatever the case may be. What is the ideal shape of your life? Where do you find yourself most content, by the sense of you're doing things you want to do, but you know you're helping many? There's a lot to that. But then there's a question we have to ask as well. What is that you don't want? I can tell you what I don't want. What I don't want was that very, very morbidly obese guy who was just trudging through life, not happy. I mean, did he know what kind of wine to drink with dinner? Yeah. Did he know exactly what sort of bourbon to use in that Manhattan? Yeah. Did he know the rules to any sort of casino game? You betcha. That's not what I want. It's not sustainable. It's not healthy. And it was killing me. Slowly, surely, and it was getting faster and faster and faster. That is certainly what I don't want. What I want is the ability to live the most healthy life, but the most joyous life and the most content life, both mentally and physically. Goes back to health. Everything we've talked about on the show goes back to health one way or another, but that is more sustainable and more lasting for me than what I was. Brad says, sometimes I get lucky and I have the crop of Grimes at the prison. Oh man, I brought that up, didn't I? And he also says, I love gardening, but he's not good at it. Yeah, gardening is tough. Gardening is a tough skill, and I have very, very large admiration for those who take up gardening and do a very fine job at doing that. So it takes a lot of patience, but it also takes a lot of time and a lot of just crafting of what the ideal garden or that sort of horticultural arrangement looks like. So yeah, major respect for gardeners. We talked about exactly what it is we should stay away from, or why we might be paralyzed in thinking of what not asking ourselves what we want in this life. But then we ask the questions that we could think of as far as trying to gravitate to what we want in this life. Personally, from a health perspective, I want to be able to do these road races. I want to run marathons, half marathons. I want to live as physically able as I can. There's a couple of points to that, and it goes back to the MS. As what I learned is that with the way that demyelination works in the body, it's the sort of thing that you if you use certain forms of or certain activities, if you stay active, you end up not losing those sort of things. Whereas if you don't use those sort of things, you don't stay active, you don't stay healthy, you're going to become worse over time. I will say this. If that MS diagnosis and that demyelination came to someone who was 480 pounds, you wouldn't be talking to this guy right now. So if you like something, you use it or you lose it. So that's the reason why health has been paramount in my mind. That's why I'm back in the gym. That's why I'm running. That's why I'm doing this, that, and the other thing. As far as my sort of academic sort of pursuits, my sort of communicative pursuits, I want to continue doing this. I want to continue telling my story. There's a lot to be learned here. So again, it's the sort of thing where if I keep doing it, you don't lose it, for sure. Couple of comments. Sarah says, you learn how to garden by doing it. Yes. Yeah. Jamie says, doing is the biggest part of learning for me. Yeah. Learning by example. Learning by practical, right? So you do something over and over and over again, eventually you get good at it. But that's true with a lot of things in life. To which Sarah says, me too, Jamie. So yeah, the more we do iterations of things, the more we learn. And not being afraid of being off the first time, the second time, the 100th time. Just keep at it. It's how we learn. It's how we do things. That's how we enjoy these things. That's how we end up becoming decent at something we couldn't do before. Very funny. Brad says, I had to run downstairs and didn't take the phone because I didn't think I'd be that long, so can you repeat everything from the past 8 minutes? Well, this episode will be available on replay. So, there you go. One last thing before I have a reminder about the Walk MS and then what we're going to talk about on Thursday. And we talked about basically figuring out what we want, but in order to get there, what do we really want? So let's talk about that. More Language of Letting Go for April 18th. Say what you really want. What do you want? Now, I'm not asking what thing you want, but rather, what is it about that thing that you are seeking? Get to the root of your search. Do you want a new car? Do you want reliable transportation? Or do you want the prestige that comes with driving a shiny new vehicle? Do you really want to do that kind of work? Or do you just want the money and prestige you hope it will bring? Do you want a romantic relationship? Do you want a partnership based on equal ground? Or do you want someone to take care of you? What is it that you're really looking for? Get as specific as you can. When we examine our goals and dreams, we may find that we're motivated by a deeper desire. I want to reach this point in my career, we say. Well, look deeper. What's at the root of that goal? If what you're desiring is creative freedom, maybe you can gain it in other ways than by getting a promotion. If you want your spouse or partner to quit drinking, perhaps what you're really seeking is a calmer home environment and relief from the pain. If you can't make them stop drinking, maybe there's another way you can achieve that dream. Or maybe you'll decide that you can contribute to that now while waiting for your loved one to change. Be honest in your search for the root of your goals. Some of the roots of your goals might not be so healthy after all. Maybe the goal will need to change. But you could save yourself from heartache by discovering it now. Maybe the route is healthy, but you've placed too much value on following only one path to reach it and not exploring all the paths per se. Be aware of all the opportunities around you. Don't sell life short. There may be more than one way to get what you really want. God, help me become aware of what I'm really seeking in life. And that's more language of letting go. So what is it you want? After having a deep conversation about this, or at least thinking about this, what do you want? If you want to share what you want, let me know. Send me an email, theventureforward@gmail.com. Because it's a question, a very tough question, but once you have a plan, you'll find that it becomes something that you're really proud of. So if you want to share, let me know. Drop me an email, theventureforward@gmail.com. And then let's talk about the Walk MS once more, because the walk is on Saturday. The walk is being held at Ridley Creek State Park over in Media. It's going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern on Saturday. The site opens at 9, and we're looking to get a really large turnout for the walk. Very excited to do this. It's just an amazing organization, and these sort of events that we do, the Walk MS, and there are others, are leading us to a community that is raising more awareness about multiple sclerosis and demyelination, but is also funding research that gets you drugs like Ocrevus and other things that may help basically hamper the growth of multiple sclerosis and demyelination, or maybe at some point, as my website is kind of insinuating, maybe cause remyelination. Perhaps a cure to multiple sclerosis. Perhaps a cure to demyelination by remyelinating the brain cells, remyelinating the central nervous system. So if you're interested in learning more or donating money to this cause, go to rebrand.ly/a venture to a cure. Once again, rebrand.ly/a venture to a cure. Let's talk about Thursday. Last week, we talked about internal family systems and how important a therapy has been, and continues to be for me. We're going to explore other kinds of therapies like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, etc. There's basically a classification for these. They're called talk therapies. And we're going to talk about talk therapy on Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And then Friday, we do what we do every Friday. We have a conversation about anything and everything with Matt Haas, Paul Burke, and all of you on VF Talks. That is Friday night, 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. But until then, I'm going to say the same thing I say at the end of every Venture Forward in VF Talks. Stay safe, stay sane, stay strong, stay sober. You're worth it. We'll see you again Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific for the next episode of The Venture Forward. Have a wonderful night. I love you all, and fly, be free.